Wan slowly opened her eyes and looked around the bedroom lazily. Soft morning sunlight was entering through the curtains, making the room and peaceful. Her still felt tired because she and Jungkook very late last night. She slowly turned her head and saw her husband Jeon Jungkook standing near the door while fixing his watch and getting ready for the company. Her eyes moved toward the clock, 9 o'clock am. Wan blinked slowly before burying half of her face into the pillow again. Wan whispered softly, Jungkook. Jungkook immediately turned around after hearing her voice. His serious expression melted into a soft smile. He walked toward the bed and sat beside her carefully. He leaned down and pressed a gentle on her forehead. Good morning, he said softly. Wan smiled, still to properly open her eyes. The blanket slipped a little from her shoulder and Jungkook quickly adjusted the bedsheet around her, covering her carefully because she was under it. His eyes softened, seeing her so small, and Jungkook brushed her messy hair away from her face. I'm leaving now, he whispered. Rest properly. Don't get up, he whispered. And start working. Matt will handle everything. Wan stared at him quietly. Jungkook pinched her cheek lightly. I'll come back soon tonight. Wan nodded slowly, too lazy and comfortable to speak when he pampered her like this. Jungkook chuckled softly, seeing her half expression. So cute. He murmured. Wan opened her arms slightly toward him like a Jungkook smiled immediately and leaned down into her embrace carefully. Wan wrapped her arm around his and her face into his. Don't go, she whispered. Jungkook almost ragged her. The top of her head. If I don't go, who will run the company? Van mumbled something unclear against his, making him laugh quietly. Jungkook slowly pulled away and took her back into the blanket properly. Again, before leaving, he leaned down one last time and her softly. Van smiled with the closed eyes. She whispered. Jungkook stared at her for a few seconds like he never wanted to leave, then finally grabbed his coat and walked out of the bedroom quietly, while Van slowly fell again in their bed. At Gion Corporation, the large meeting room was filled with silence and professionalism. Employees sat properly while the presentation continued on the big screen. Jungkook sat on the head chair of the long table, looking calm and serious in his black suit. His sharp eyes stayed on the presentation while listening carefully. Yunjin stood near the screen confidently as she explained the final strategy for the new project, and this way the company profit can increase by 20% within the next quarter. She finished professionally. The room became quiet for a second before everyone started clapping loudly. Good job, Director Yunjin. That was impressive. Yunjin smiled politely and bowed her head slightly. Her eyes secretly moved toward Jungkook. Jungkook looked at the files in front of him before speaking calmly. Good, this is the better strategy. Yunjin's heart immediately fluttered hearing his praise. Thank you, sir, she said softly, trying to hide her blush. She had been in with Jungkook for a long time. To everyone else, Jungkook was a cold, powerful, and impossible to approach, but to her, even his smallest praise felt special. Jungkook closed the file and stood up from his chair, prepared the final draft by evening. Everyone nodded quickly. Yes, sir. The meeting finally ended. Employees slowly walked out, talking among themselves. Yunjin stayed behind, organizing her papers carefully while secretly watching Jungkook. Jungkook loosened his tie slightly, looking tired. Without thinking much, Yunjin walked closer. Sir, did you eat breakfast? She asked softly. Jungkook looked at her shortly. No. Yunjin smiled slightly. I can order coffee for you. Before Jungkook could answer, his phone suddenly vibrated on the table. The cold expression on his face disappeared instantly after seeing the caller ID. Yunjin's smile froze slightly. Jungkook answered immediately, his voice becoming soft in a second. Hmm. On the other side, Van's voice came softly. Jungkook. Yunjin quietly looked away while holding the files tightly. Jungkook leaned back on the chair slightly, his eyes softening. Did you wake up? He asked gently. One whispered, I woke up and you are not here. A small smile appeared on Jungkook's unconsciously. I told you I had a work today. Come back fast. Jungkook chuckled quietly. I will. Yunjin silently watched the entire thing. The way the cold seer changed completely for his wife made something settle in her because no matter how much him, that softness in Jungkook's eyes only to Wayne. The bedroom was filled with, while cold wind softly the window outside. Wan comfortably on the bed with a small smile on her face, trying to catch her. Jungkook leaned down and pecked her cheek before standing up. I'll be back, he whispered. Wan nodded softly. Jungkook walked into the bathroom to himself first. Wan waited patiently because he always took care of her afterward, no matter how tired he was. After some time, Jungkook came out wearing only a towel around his. He carefully Wan changed bedsheet and made her comfortable again before pulling the blanket over her. Wan looked at him. Jungkook, I want chocolate, she said softly. It's cold outside. Jungkook smiled immediately at her cute request. Okay. He leaned down and heard softly, I'll make it for you. He wore his black pant quickly and walked downstairs toward the kitchen. Van stayed on the bed, quietly hugging the blanket around herself. A few minutes later, Jungkook's phone suddenly started ringing on the nightstand. Van looked at the screen, unknown number. She picked it up carefully. Hello? A woman's voice came from the other side. Can you give the phone to Jungkook? Van blinked slightly. I'm his wife. He is busy right now. You can tell me what you want to say. There was a silence for a second. Then the woman spoke again, sounding impatient. No, give him the phone. Van frowned slightly at the rude tone. You can tell me. Van repeated calmly. He is busy right now. The woman suddenly laughed. So you are his wife. Van's expression slowly changed. Yes. The woman's voice became quieter. Then maybe you should ask your husband why he spent so much time with me before marriage. Van's finger tightened around the phone. Before she could say anything, the call suddenly disconnected. The room became silent again. Van stared at the phone quietly. Van sat quietly in the living room after Jungkook left for the company. A cup of tea rested in her hand, but her mind was somewhere else. The phone call from last night kept replaying in her head. Maybe you should ask your husband why he spent so much time with me before marriage. Van sighed softly. She trusted Jungkook completely. He had told her many times that before her there was never any woman he truly, and she believed him still. Something about that call disturbed her heart. Van leaned back on the couch before suddenly standing up. I'll go meet him, she whispered to herself. Maybe seeing him would make her feel better. It's Yon Corporation. Employees bowed respectfully as the van walked through the company building. Everyone already knew how much Jungkook, his wife, Van reached Jungkook's cabin and noticed the door was slightly open. She looked inside quietly. Jungkook was sitting behind his desk while smiling slightly at something. A beautiful woman stood in front of him, holding some files. Van's eyes narrowed slightly. The woman looked comfortable around him. Van pushed the door open and walked inside. Jungkook immediately looked up. The moment he saw her, his entire expression softened. He instantly stood up and walked toward her. You are here? Van nodded softly. I was you. A small smile appeared on Jungkook's face immediately. He wrapped an arm around her and pulled her against his. Naturally, I would have come home early if I knew my miss me this much. Van stayed in his arms, but her eyes moved toward the woman standing near the desk. Yunjin, the same woman from yesterday's meeting. Yunjin politely bowed her head, but Van noticed the way her eyes on Jungkook for a second too long. Wan looked at her coldly. Jungkook noticed the instantly. He turned slightly toward the Yunjin. Yunjin, you can go now. Yunjin nodded quietly. Yes, sir. She picked up the files and walked out of the cabin silently. Jungkook and Wan sat together on the couch inside his cabin while talking quietly. Jungkook held her hand gently while listening to her talk about random things from home. His thumb softly rubbed against her absent-mindedly. You should have called me before coming, he said softly. I would have gone downstairs to pick you up. Wan smiled faintly. I wanted to surprise you. Before Jungkook could reply, the cabin door knocked slightly. Come in. Yunjin walked inside holding some files. Sir, these papers need your signature. Jungkook nodded and took the file. Wan quietly watched her. Yunjin placed the file on the table, but instead of leaving immediately, she started talking about unnecessary things regarding her work. This client also requested another meeting. Jungkook nodded shortly while signing the papers. Wan noticed the way Yunjin kept looking at Jungkook while talking. It was not professional anymore. It irritated her. Jungkook finally handed the file back. You can handle it. Yes, sir. Yunjin said softly, but she still didn't leave. Instead, she smiled slightly at Jungkook. You have been working too lately. Wan's expression, Jungkook frowned slightly, clearly not interested in continuing the conversation. I'm fine. Yunjin's eyes moved toward Wan for a second before returning to Jungkook. You should rest more, sir. That was enough. Wan stood up suddenly. Are you done? She asked coldly. Yunjin looked at her calmly. I'm just doing my work. Your work? Wan laughed shortly. By staring at my husband every second. The room instantly became tense. Jungkook warned softly, but Wan was already angry. The way Yunjin stayed around Jungkook longer than necessary. Yunjin crossed her arms slightly. At least I know how to behave professionally. Before Jungkook could react, slept. The sound echoed inside the cabin. Yunjin's face turned to the side from the force. Silence filled the room. Jungkook immediately stood up. Wan glared at Yunjin angrily. Stay away from my husband. Yunjin slowly looked back at her with a shock and humiliation in her eyes. Jungkook grabbed Wan's wrist gently but firmly. What are you doing? He asked in disbelief. Wan looked at him. You saw the way she was looking at you? She worked here. Jungkook replied frustrated. She wants enough. No. Wan pulled her hand away. Ever since I noticed, she kept trying to get your attention. Jungkook ran a hand through his hair tiredly. You slapped my employee inside the company, and she deserved it. Yunjin quietly picked up the files with a trembling hands. I'll leave, she whispered. She walked out quietly while holding back tears. The moment the door closed, Jungkook looked at Wan seriously. You cannot react like this. Wan's eyes filled with anger and so now you are defending her. I'm trying to calm this situation. You smile at her. Jungkook stared at her for a second in shock. I smile at employees during a meeting, Wan. You don't understand. No, you don't understand. Jungkook interrupted softly but firmly. Only you. But this behavior was wrong. Ryan's eyes became watery immediately. The fact that he called her wrong. More than anything, without another word, she grabbed her bag and walked out of the cabin while Jungkook stood there frustrated and exhausted. At home, Wan silently on the bed while staring at the ceiling. Her phone kept vibrating again and again beside her. Jungkook calling again and again, but she ignored every call. After leaving the company angrily, she came home directly and locked herself inside her bedroom before Jungkook could stop her. Outside the room, she could hear his voice. Wan opened the door. Silent. Jungkook knocked again, softer this time. Open the door and talk to me. Wan turned around on the bed stubbornly and pulled the blanket over herself. I don't want to talk, she said loudly. A tired sigh came from outside. A few minutes later, another knock came. I made food for you. No, you didn't eat lunch properly. I said no. The hallway became quiet after that. Fan closed her eyes tightly. At first, anger still inside her. The image of Yunjin looking at Jungkook kept replaying in her mind again and again, but slowly, as the time passed, her anger started calming down, and guilt slowly replaced it. Wan sat up quietly on the bed. She remembered the shocked look on Yunjin's face after that slap, then Jungkook's disappointed expression. Wan covered her face with her hands. What did I do? She whispered. She trusted Jungkook. Then why did she lose? Jungkook never gave her any reason to doubt him, never. In fact, he always reassured her openly and treated her like the most important person in his life. Yet, she created a scene inside his company. Once tightened, and I argued with him too. Tears slowly filled her eyes. Outside the room, Jungkook still sat on the floor near the bedroom door, wearing the same office clothes. His tie was loose and his head leaned tiredly against the wall. He had stayed there the entire time. When he suddenly heard the lock click, he immediately lifted his head. The bedroom door slowly opened. Van stood there quietly with red eyes. The moment she saw Jungkook sitting outside the door killed her even. Jungkook Jungkook stood up immediately. Before he could say anything, Van eyes filled with the tears. I'm sorry, she whispered brokenly. I should not have done that. Jungkook immediately pulled Van into his arms when he saw her crying. It's okay, he whispered softly while rubbing her back gently. Look at me. Van looked up at him with a guilty eyes. I was jealous and angry. I don't know why I acted like that. Jungkook sighed softly before her forehead. Because you knew too much. My eyes became watery again. I trust you, I know. Jungkook whispered, and I'm not angry anymore. He lifted her chin carefully. But don't yourself by overthinking him. There is no one else for me. Van nodded slowly before hugging him tightly. Jungkook smiled faintly and carried her toward the bed like she weighed nothing, making her giggle softly despite everything. At night, the living room was quiet except for Jungkook's calm voice as he talked with an investor on call. Yes, we can finalize the deal tomorrow morning, Ningle. Meanwhile, upstairs, Van stood in front of the mirror nervously. She opened the closet and took out the Jungkook the most. She had only worn it once before, and Jungkook completely lost that night. Van's cheeks became pink, remembering it. I'll with him properly, she whispered shyly. She quickly changed into it before climbing onto the bed. Sometime later, Jungkook finally ended the call before walking toward their bedroom. But the moment he opened the door, he froze. Van sat on the bed, peering the delicate, while softly her hair fell around her shoulder beautifully, and her for a slightly as she looked at him shyly. Jungkook's got stuck. He whispered hoarsely. Van smiled softly. I wanted to say sorry properly. That was enough for Jungkook. Van smiled happily while running her fingers through his hair. Then suddenly, Jungkook's phone vibrated on the nightstand. Van turned her head casually, but her smile slowly disappeared. On the screen, the caller ID flashed clearly. Van heart dropped instantly. The room suddenly felt cold. Her fingers slowly tightened on the bedsheet while thoughts entered her mind again. Maybe, really was someone else. Tears slowly filled her eyes. Jungkook immediately noticed her silence and looked up. But the moment he followed her gaze toward the phone, his expression changed completely. Van quickly sat up on the bed, tear already falling from her eyes. You, someone else? She asked brokenly. Jungkook's eyes widened immediately. What? Van looked at the phone with a trembling. You are on me. No, Jungkook said quickly. He immediately pulled her into his arms and grabbed the vibrating from the nightstand. It's not what you think. Van kept crying softly against his, while Jungkook answered the call with irritation. Kim Taehyung, Jungkook, why the are you calling me this late? A loud laugh came from the other side. What? Cannot I call you? Van blinked and slowly looked up after hearing Taehyung's voice clearly. Jungkook rubbed his forehead tiredly. Why did you change your name in my phone again? Taehyung laughed. Oh, that, it was so funny. Jungkook looked down at Van while she stared at him with embarrassed eyes. It was Taehyung, she whispered softly. Jungkook sighed. We'll talk later. He ended the call and placed the phone aside before looking back at his wife. Then his expression softened completely. He cupped her cheeks gently. So, he said softly, his voice full of teasing affection. Why did my cute little adorable wife think I am on her? Hmm? Van pouted in embarrassment and shook her head quickly. Jungkook, the corner offered softly. Am I lacking somewhere? Am I not you enough? No, Van whispered quickly. Then Van hesitated for a second before remembering the call from last night. Her expression slowly became serious again. Last night, a woman called your phone from an unknown number. Jungkook frowned slightly. She said you used to spend time with her before a marriage. Jungkook's expression immediately. What? Van looked down quietly. She sounded like she knew you personally. Jungkook stayed silent for a few seconds while thinking. Then suddenly realization flashed in his eyes. Wait. He grabbed his phone quickly and searched something before showing Juan a number. Was this the number? Juan looked carefully before nodding slowly yes. May Jungkook let out an annoyed Jin Jin. Juan eyes widened. She called you? Jungkook nodded slowly. She used to work under me years ago in another branch. Before leaving the country back then, she was confessed to me. Juan looked at him quietly. I rejected her immediately. Jungkook continued calmly. I never dated her. His eyes he softened while looking at Juan. The only woman I ever is sitting in front of me right now. Juan eyes slowly filled with the tears again, but this time from relief. Jungkook pulled her into his and hugged her tightly. You really thought I called someone else after getting you? He whispered against her head. Juan hid her face in his. Embarrassed, I'm sorry. Jungkook chuckled softly and her forehead. My